Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk, NFTs, crypto, and Web3. I am your host, ASIATHABIRD. Today, I have a very special guest with me today. She is an NFT artist and the founder and creator of Women and Weapons. Please welcome Sara Baumann. Hello, Sara. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Asia. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to get started by asking, where are you from, and tell us a little about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much born and raised in Dallas, Texas area. Culturally, I am half Iranian. My mom immigrated from Iran in the late 1970s, whenever the revolution was happening. And growing up, my parents got divorced whenever I was quite young. I think I was like 10 years old or so. And then a lot of my upbringing was my mom. And so she very much from a young age wanted me, I think, partially the immigrant in her, and then partially, cultural. She really wanted to make sure that I had a sustainable career. And so she really started pushing me towards either healthcare or legal or engineering or something of that sort. I had always been passionate about art. And so I ended up actually going into the field of occupational therapy, working in the hospitals for the last 5 years. So that's a little bit of kind of like where I'm from, what my upbringing is, that kind of leads into the rest of the story.
All right. Now, I want to definitely get into the occupational therapy part, because like, what was the decision behind being an occupational therapist, while, being an artist?
Yeah, well, occupational therapy was kind of like a non-debatable option for me. It was going to be a healthcare, an engineering, or a legal field for me. Basically, were the options that I was dealt, and occupational therapy happens to be like one of the more artsy of the science fields.
Right.
But I had always been passionate about art. I had always been making art. However, throughout college, I started picking up commissions and starting to do my artwork, selling a lot of my artwork on Etsy. I was making jewelry, I was making prints, you name it. I was selling a lot of that on Etsy, and then I was getting a lot of commissions as well. And so even as I bridged out of college and into working in the professional field in healthcare, I was continuing to accept and work on commissioned art pieces. And so I actually paint a lot on cow skulls, which is kind of a funny medium to be painting on.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of cow skulls that I would paint on and then ship those out. And then I did a lot of canvases as well. And so it wasn't really until I met with Web3 that I really started delving into more digital art. But yeah, basically my art and my healthcare went hand in hand with one another from like day one.
Right, exactly. Now, in regards to art, so are you purely self-taught, or did you go to school for art?
I am majoritively self-taught. Art runs really, really deep in my family. My dad is a phenomenal artist. My grandma's a phenomenal artist. Basically my whole family in Iran are all phenomenal artists. And I think from a young age, I just wanted to start playing with like any and every medium I possibly could. So, of course, started out with crayons and then markers, and then I delved into like acrylics and watercolor and this, that, and the other. And I never got like an actual professional education, i.e. like university schooling or anything. But whenever art classes were free, like whenever I was in high school, whenever I was a kid, I was taking like every possible art class I could. I took like 2 or 3 photography classes, 2 or 3 ceramics classes, a couple sculpture classes. And then my parents had me enrolled at a place called the Art House whenever I was a kid as well. And I think I did like 2 years practicing there and learned a little bit of painting and drawing as well. But a lot of it is very much self-taught, or watching my dad draw, or watching my grandma or my cousins draw. And so a lot of it kind of stemmed from there.
So were they mostly like, painters for the most part?
It kind of ranges, honestly. So I have some cousins that are graphic designers. I have some that are architects. My uncle and one of my cousins are phenomenal painters. One of my cousins really, really good with colored pencils. I have another long lost cousin that I actually just found recently, who's a phenomenal sculptor. And he's actually made some like massive sculptures that have gone inside of buildings and on the side of buildings. Yeah. And then my grandma is a painter. So it's kind of covered the gamut, basically.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow. Yeah. A whole bloodline of artists. That's incredible.
Yes.
That's really, really, really cool.
it's kind of funny to look back at it and realize like how many of the family members were so deeply, you know, involved in art, and like how that's been a passion for so many of us, both from my mom's side and my dad's side.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. But I definitely want to get into just in regards to like, you know, with artists, like who would you consider to be like your favorite artist or any art era? Like what would you consider to be your favorite art era?
I think that I have a tendency to lean towards a lot of realism. And so I don't know necessarily that I have like a particular era that I really, really love. Perhaps maybe pop art. But like I really, really, really love some of Salvador Dali's pencil drawings and pen drawings, a lot of Da Vinci's pencil and pen drawings, that very like realism but raw type of artwork.
Right.
I'm an immense, immense fan of Kehinde Wiley. He's one of my favorite artists of all time.
Yeah.
As well as Shepard Fairey. But I've always seemed to gravitate towards a lot of like hyper realism or anything that's very ornate and detailed. I think I'm probably a little bit of a maximalist. If you ever come to my house, you'd see that I have like way too much color and way too many rugs absolutely everywhere. I love abstract. I really, really, really love abstract, but like, I don't know. I can't get my brain to do it at all. Actually, Amber Victoria is another one of my favorite artists, and she's a majoritively abstract artist. But yeah, those are some of my big favorites.
Yeah, I'm like the same way. I love Salvador Dali and, you know, Leonardo da Vinci. I like Michelangelo. Like he did like those cool, huge paintings in the Sistine Chapel, and I found that to be really cool. Like I'm more so like surrealism. You know, especially like the era with Keith Haring and Kenny Scharf and Jean-Michel Basquiat. You know, I really like their style, especially Kenny Scharf. Like, you know, if you've seen his work, it's very colorful with the eyes, and it's just absolutely amazing.
Well, if you like Basquiat, you should definitely watch the Andy Warhol documentary that's on Netflix, because it talks a lot about his relationship with Basquiat, and it's very interesting kind of how the two got along. Very fascinating to watch.
Right, exactly. Most definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely watch that. That sounds really cool. So you quit your job from being an occupational therapist to being a full artist full time. And you talked about in an interview about selling your work on Etsy and other platforms, like how you said, you know, earlier in this interview. But I definitely want to get into something that's really interesting too, that you mentioned that Gary Vee purchased a few pieces of your work and he will become the driving force as for you to get into the NFT space, for you to get established in the NFT space. So tell us a story about how like Gary Vee like discovered you. Like, what was that like?
That is easily the most bananas story of all time. It's funny because it was all happening kind of like towards the tail end of COVID, where like I was just really starting to be burnt out in healthcare. And that January of 2021, my husband had really started delving into NFTs and was, you know, kind of hint, nudging me like, you should really look into this. Like, especially as an artist, this is something that you really learn and get accustomed to. And so I did, but I was like dipping my toes in slowly. And I really started recognizing like the community behind the NFT space, the Web3 space. I started recognizing the opportunities that the technology would offer, especially to artists, and really started getting invested in it. And so I put these pieces that I had been working on for a long time, my original Women and Weapons pieces, minted them on OpenSea in like, I want to say August or maybe even before that of last year. And they had sat for like a month or so. And I'm just like getting to know people in the community, reaching out to people on Twitter, trying to, you know, get my art out there. And Gary Vee does a post on Twitter. He used to do this on some Saturdays, basically saying, if you're a one-of-one artist and you have unsold artwork, you know, post it here. I'd love to be your first collector. And I posted it before I went to the hospital. I had to work on a Saturday. And I was like, I'd love it if you were my first collector. And so I'm in a patient's room and all of a sudden I get like a million vibrations on my Apple Watch. And I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. And so I, you know, finish up with my patient. I run downstairs and I call my husband. I'm like, what's the TLDR on what's happening with my Apple Watch right now? And he's crying on the other side of the phone. And he's like, oh my God, like Gary Vee just bought 3 of your pieces and the rest of them sold out in 45 seconds. And I was like, does that mean I can quit my job? And he was like, no, definitely not. I was like, okay. But prior to that, I had been working on something that was a little bit more purpose built for the space, being the 10,000 piece collection that many folks are familiar with today.
Right.
But after Gary's purchase, I think that was really like the gasoline on the fire that I was like, I gotta go. Like, I gotta get going with this. And so like I had just started and I was planning on moving really, really slow. Right. And then after that happened, I just like picked up and ran with it and launched the 10,000 piece Women and Weapons collection like a month and a half later or so in October of 2021.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Wow, that's really, really amazing. But I definitely want to get into Women and Weapons. Speaking of Women and Weapons, why did you name your PFP collection Women and Weapons? And what was like the inspirations behind the collection?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I think this is an area that a lot of people often miss whenever it comes to why Women and Weapons. So I was at a exhibit by Shireen Nashat, who's an Iranian artist who really speaks to kind of a lot of the dichotomies between like male versus female relations with the culture of Iran and the government of Iran and what's going on there. And it kind of had me thinking like introspectively of like the relationship that we had with women in the mid-century in the United States and how women who were like truly so strong and so powerful were often like put down and not perceived as powerful. And so I kind of wanted to riff off of like these women working in the factories during these World War II periods and making them or portraying them as powerful and utilizing those weapons as the weapons and the symbols and metaphors of the weapons that women carry into their everyday. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of other like underlying kind of messaging in there that, you know, I think I had been just like internally toiling with and so on. But, you know, I don't want to give everything away. I certainly want the viewer to also take their own perceptions from the artwork. But, you know, with so much going on in regards to that rhetoric and the power of women, you know, one of the big things for me is that conversation is often a catalyst for changing culture. And I think that if we can have conversations around why Women and Weapons, what do these weapons mean to you? Like, how do you perceive this artwork? How does this person perceive the artwork? And having the conversation, I think that hopefully, even if minutely, that can be a positive catalyst for change. And so that's kind of the why for why Women and Weapons.
Wow, that's very, very interesting because like I was gonna ask like what would be like your favorite like, you know, women-based movies like with weapons and stuff. Cause you know, with some of the PFPs, you know, I could see inspirations like from Kill Bill or like you know, Catwoman, you know, the movie from the early 2000s, Elektra with Jennifer Garner with the fly weapons, or you know, the female characters of Mortal Kombat, something like that. Yeah.
So like I mean, I guess there is the fact that like I'm obsessed with action movies. Like Fast and Furious is one of like my favorite like film chains of all time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and like I'm a really big tomboy. Like I grew up like go-karting and dirt biking and you know, all of that. But it's definitely not about like the action or the weaponry or anything of that sort. It's really meant to be more the sentiment behind it, like what it means to you, the metaphorical nature of it all, but also a solid representation of the woman who I think is a reflection of me, which is, you know, the tomboy, badass, not that I'm like a badass, but, you know, the girl who's maybe not as like feminine, but maybe a girl who occasionally likes to be feminine, but also likes to go get dirty and dirt bike, you know? So that was kind of the reflection of myself there too.
Yeah. Like, you know, I kind of have that balance too. You know what I mean? I like girly things, but I also like masculine stuff like cars. And, you know, when I was a little kid, I would ride my ATV and go-kart. You know what I mean? So I can relate to that a little bit, you know.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way I'm ever shying away from like an opportunity to get on an ATV or to do something that's like semi-dangerous. Like I'm all about that kind of stuff. Getting dirty, I'm down for it. Like you got a dirt bike, let's go. But also, like, I occasionally like to put on a skirt and a dress and, like, do my hair and, like, wear makeup. So, you know, best of both worlds.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's the thing. I love Fast and Furious because of the fast cars. And when I started getting into, like, driving and having my own car and driving around, and I started having a love of cars like BMWs and Aston Martins. I remember one time me and my family went to Boca Raton, and we looked at different types of cars that would just be driving by, like Aston Martins and Lamborghinis and Ferraris. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so cool.
Oh yeah. No, whenever I went to, I think it was Switzerland, whenever I was in high school, I saw a Wiseman Roadster, and I had never seen one of those cars before. And I was like, oh my God, this car is so cool. Cause I'm also obviously like obsessed with the mid-century and like mid-century cars and culture and everything.
Right.
And it's kind of like a retro-esque looking car. And I was just like obsessed with it. And I still don't really see any in the United States ever, but yes, like I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely really, really cool. But definitely, what are like some of like your favorite mediums to use when doing like, you know, the Women and Weapons like drawings, like besides like being like digital?
Yeah, so the original collection was actually painted with gouache. And if anybody's unfamiliar with gouache, it's kind of like almost like a hybrid of acrylics and watercolor.
Right.
And, you know, they can be thinned to almost emulate watercolor, but like with a very matte kind of texture, or you can keep them very, very thick and opaque, and it layers on top of itself really, really nicely.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of my artwork is definitely expressed differently dependent on what my medium is. So like if I'm using gouache, I feel like my art looks one way. If I'm using acrylics, my art looks another way. If I'm doing digital, it looks another way. Like I'm very much inspired by, I think, the sensory feedback that I get whenever I'm making the artwork.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Most definitely. I love gouache and watercolor and, you know, acrylic and, you know, like, especially like with nail art, I work with like gel now. I used to not work with gel. I used to work with like acrylic and do like designs with acrylic paint, you know, so now I do like, you know, gel.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing. I do nail art also. So, you know, not only am I illustrator.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, no, that's super dope. I wish I could do stuff like that, but I don't know like how you have the skills to like paint so precisely and finely, especially on a fingernail.
Yeah. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe it. And really good eyes too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I definitely want to get into this one question with Women and Weapons. So for people who are holders of a Women and Weapons NFT, what are some of like the benefits, you know, or the traits that, you know, comes with the Women and Weapons?
Yeah, so a lot of the benefits are the fact that you're a part of our community, right? And you're getting to interact with a lot of these wonderful humans who have participated in our community. We've also done a variety of different airdrops. So, for example, our season 2, we airdropped on a one-to-one basis to our season 1 holders. We've done a variety of different like art raffles whenever it came to my dazzling dozen art pieces that we dropped to holders. We've done different merch launches and different actual in-person activations as well. But more than anything else, we're very focused on building out a brand and something that can be a household name and really bringing our IP and our characters to life, because we firmly believe that we have a very strong IP that's really wonderful for storytelling. And when we get back to holders, we 100% are focused on that.
Right, absolutely. But definitely, like, what's like some of like the conversations and like the reviews about like the Women and Weapons collection? Like, how did people like react to it?
Honestly, it was a really, really cool reception. So we went to VCon last year. I don't know if you're familiar with VCon. Yeah. So we had a booth at NFT Land last year, and we had a lot of people coming up to us that were talking about how either, like, if they were women, they said, you know, my Women and Weapons really empowers me because I see myself in her. Or, you know, I wake up and like one of the things that it kind of urges me to think is like, what is the weapon that I'm carrying into today? Like, is it perseverance? Is it my intelligence? Is it my motherhood? Is it my empathy? Whatever it may be. But we had a lot of like dads and brothers and cousins and you name it who have also purchased Women and Weapons and said, you know, I want this to be something that my daughter can look at and feel strong and feel empowered and recognize that she can change her future. So those are some of, I think, the feedback pieces that we've received that have really hit home. And really been super, super meaningful. I mean, clearly I'm like able to recite them almost word for word today because they meant that much to me. And I've had a lot of people also who have purchased because they look like their sister and, you know, it makes them feel very close to that piece because it does remind them of somebody who maybe they don't have anymore. But yeah, it's been really interesting, like the variety of feedback that we've gotten from, you know, people who have collected.
Yeah, I find that very interesting because, you know, I like what you do, especially with the collection, because it's not so obvious about like, you know, motherhood and, you know, like different types of, you know, womanhood, you know, it's symbolism through the weapons. It's like how you said, what weapon are you carrying, with you today? Is it perseverance? Is it, intelligence, like how you said before? Is it being loving, caring, kind, and different things of that nature? So I like how, you use like your illustration, especially women with the weapons, to really, have a deeper meaning, not just stating like the obvious.
Well, thank you, Asia. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm so happy that so many people have like picked up on the undertones of why Women and Weapons. That's been something that's been really meaningful to me, especially as an artist who like put so much, I think, emotion and thought into the Women and Weapons collection, and that it's not just what you see is what you get. Like there's a lot of layers to this, and I like seeing people really peeling those layers apart and kind of identifying how it's meaningful to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Most definitely. Now, of course, I'm still, getting to know the NFT space. I'm still pretty new, like a spring chicken.
Yeah.
And, I'm a holder of a few NFTs like Laidback Llamas, Nala's Dino Collection, and also Global Kind. I won those off of giveaways.
Good for you. Those are good ones.
Yeah. I love, those collections, especially Laidback Llamas. Laidback Llamas is my absolute favorite.
Spirit animal, right?
What do you say?
It's like your spirit animal, right? Because I feel like if I could, I would love to be a laid back llama.
Yeah. Laidback Llamas are really, really fun. I had a chance to interview Jesse Galati, the co-founder of Laidback Llamas, and he's really, really cool. And and I like what they're doing, especially with the new roadmap.
Nice, very nice. That's awesome. Congrats, sister. That's fabulous. Way to win.
Yeah. Thank you so much. But I definitely want to get into just in regards to, I'm a beginner in the NFT space, still gradually learning about NFTs. And, I don't have my own NFTs that I'm selling as of yet, but I'm still enthusiastic of learning about it before I jump into some of my own NFTs. So just in regards to people who are new in NFTs and still trying to, understand the space, like what are some pieces of advice you would give for someone who wants to be successful in the NFT space?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, one of the biggest things that I want people to recognize is that they really need to do their research and really put in the time to learn about the space and learn how to be safe in the space. Right. And so, Gary says, and I also say, put in at least 50, 60 hours of time just learning about it. Like, get to know the community, jump on Twitter, jump into Discord, just, if not just observing, actually interact with people, be very careful not to click on any links. Right. But also like jump into Twitter spaces, listen to what people have to say there. You can go on to YouTube. There's a plethora of free education on YouTube about the Web3 space. One of the things that I would say to people is to, if you are going to seek out information, say on YouTube, say on social media, whatever it may be, I think it's also important to seek out the information that is most up to date. Like if anybody's familiar with like whenever you look through research articles, it's important to look through the date of the research article to make sure it's the most up-to-date thing. And I think the same goes for Web3 in the NFT space. Whenever you're looking up your research, you want to make sure it's as up-to-date as possible because this is a space where the technology is moving and changing so rapidly, constantly, that you really want to have the most up-to-date information. And if for nothing else, certainly for security's sake. But also, I think like the empathetic answer to that question is to not feel down on yourself or not experience the imposter syndrome that we all inevitably experience. It's very easy to jump into this space and feel like you're the dumbest person in the room. But you're not. We're all still figuring this out together. Like so many of us are from such a multitude of different directions, different backgrounds, ecosystems, you name it, that we're all really trying to figure out this new venture together and how it's all playing out. And so whenever you jump in, don't feel stupid. Feel free to ask questions. That's okay. Just be safe and do your research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm slowly learning about different things in the NFT Web3 space. And, like I'd be engaged in Discord and, on Twitter spaces a little bit here and there. But also too, like one of the things that, have been going around is about this thing of open editions. Yeah. So for someone who doesn't know what an open edition is, can you explain that possibly?
Yeah. So basically what an open edition is it's a single art piece. In my case, I actually did an open edition or timed open edition with my Royal Rebels launch that I did with Coinbase. So it's a single art piece that is basically you can mint as many as your heart desires or as many as the community's heart desires. The true open edition, it's open forever, essentially. And so like if there's 1 million people that want to mint, 1 million people can mint. If timed open edition, then it's only open, say, for 24 hours, and you can mint as many as you want for that 24-hour period. Sometimes we see open editions for like 17 minutes, and then you see like 7,000 pieces sell in 17 minutes. So open edition is kind of like what it sounds like, where it's open and you are able to receive editions up to whatever number either sells out within that time limit or keeps going infinitely. Like I mentioned previously, Amber Victoria, she's doing a true open edition right now, where she has one of her pieces that I want to say listed at like 0.007 or something. Don't quote me on that. Something like that. Open infinitely. And so I think thus far she's sold like 600 or 700 pieces.
Wow.
So yeah, and open editions are nothing new. This is something that artists have been doing for like ever, basically. But I think now we're starting to really popularize it in the web NFT space.
Wow, that's really, really cool. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, so I was like, when I first heard open editions, I didn't understand it at first. I was like, what is that? You know, I was like, yeah, you mint it as many times as you want.
Yeah, yeah. And if you like, say if you go to an art museum, you see on an art piece, it says like 3 out of 80, right? Like usually it's the bottom right corner of an art piece. That means that there were 80 editions of whatever that piece is or that print is, and you own number 3. With an open edition, like a true open edition where it's open infinitely, you might have piece number 3 out of however the heck many there are at present. And then same with like a timed open edition, say 7,000 pieces minted and you own piece number 3 out of 7,000, then you own edition number 3.
Okay. Yeah, that's very, now I understand more now. You know, I like how you broke that down. So yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't too like word jumble salad.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all cool. Yeah, but I understand it better now. But I definitely want to get into in regards to NFTs, and especially with women jumping into the NFT space. So we have collections such as yours, World of Women, we have Crazy Sassy X's, we have the Wonks, which is the Women Punks. So we have a lot of, you know, women, you know, based NFT collections or female based NFT collections coming out now. So what are some of like your favorite like NFT women led collections? And also too, how important is it for women representation in the NFT and Web3 space?
Well, absolutely. There's an immense need for representation of women in this space, right? Because it is, I think from the start, it's been a very like male centric space, and obviously representation for women here, because innately there's a high probability that this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And there is absolutely asymmetric upside to being within a space at an early period, right? If we can get women into this space, then hopefully we can help women win, right? And one of the things that we've seen is that representation absolutely matters. Like you said, there's World of Women, there's Women Rise, there's Boss Beauties, there's Women Weapons.
Power of Women.
What's that? Power of Women, exactly. Which which are also some of my favorite female-led brands, by the way. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different amazing collections that are out now, and it's so wonderful to see so many of them doing as well as they are. And a lot of them are really incredible pieces of art. But, you know, not only that, it's female representation, but it's also representation of the multitude of diverse women that there are as well. So like I said before, you know, I feel like Women and Weapons is a really strong reflection of who I am as a woman. Like I'm a little bit more of that tomboy. But like World of Women or Boss Beauties maybe is more of a reflection of another woman who doesn't necessarily resonate with Women and Weapons. And for everybody to be able to find kind of their own space. And now I think that all these communities are starting to offer like a different offering. And so you're able to kind of like gravitate towards these different ecosystems that each have different offerings and each have different communities that people can also belong to. So 100% important. I think also what's extremely important is education and resources for women so that we can continue to bring women into this space and have, you know, so many brilliant women continue to help us build this space as well, which many of them are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, where do you see NFTs going in the next few years? Do you think NFTs are here to stay, or do you think eventually down the road it'll die down?
No, I mean, I think if there's one thing that's true, it's that right now we are in the wild, wild west of NFTs, right? truly, if you think about like the way that the West was colonized, we are basically in that space right now. If there's one thing that's also true, it's that we have some of the most brilliant minds in the world, whether they are brilliant minds from the tech field, from the finance field. We have brilliant celebrities and investors in this space, brilliant artists in this space, and so many people who are here and really putting their brain work and brain effort into the space to build something fantastic. So I think without a doubt, like whenever you're having this many magnificent and brilliant humans in one location together, it's undeniable that something incredible is going to be created. So I anticipate it's going to be here for the long term.
I totally agree with that. Absolutely. Now, a lot of artists are getting involved with AI. So AI art is the big thing now. DALL-E and ChatGPT is the big thing now. You know, I think there's a special edition of ChatGPT where you pay $20 a month, which came out as recently. I forgot what it's called. You know, so there are digital AI influencers such as Lil Miquela and Effin Mecca. You know, they're popular influencers. So you have a 3D influencer. Her name is Nova. So I definitely want you to expand about, you know, who Nova is. Why did you come up with this character? You know, just tell us about Nova and who is she?
Well, Nova is uber sassy. That's kind of part one, which is a lot of fun because I'm the person who's acting behind Nova, basically. So it's funny because her personality is a bit different than mine is. She's way sassier. She's probably more like hugging a porcupine than she is like hugging like a warm, fuzzy sweater. But she's hilarious, right? And one of the things from the get-go that I wanted to do was to bring my characters to life, right? And that's, you know, part of why I have the lore from season 1 to season 2. And you know, we'd had the privilege of meeting with many different people that are from the entertainment industry and what have you. And we'd kind of get a lot of, you know, one of two things. Either A, yes, you guys have a very large community for Web3, but it is not a very large community for the entertainment space, which is like, you know, pretty obvious. Like whenever we say we have a holder count of like 6,000, to us, that's massive given 10,000 pieces. But the entertainment industry who are producing, you know, mainstream entertainment for the globe, that's a very minuscule number. So there was the plethora of no's. And then there was the plethora of sure, but it's going to take years for this to develop or to come about. And my husband was actually the first person who really delved into the opportunities that animation offers. And one of the things that we identified is that we can really start telling the Women and Weapons story, which Nova is essentially plucked from the Women and Weapons ecosystem, telling her own story. And we can really start telling that story now and at a rapid cadence and on platforms that we're really seeing people starting to gravitate to for their entertainment, i.e. Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever it may be. Yes, of course, people do still love their films, their TV shows, and so on. But like, you know, the vast majority of people are really starting to digest entertainment-related content from their phone. So that was a big part of why we wanted to develop out Nova and have her tell her story through these vertical medium platforms. But she could also work by working as a creator and getting that income from being a creator on these vertical medium platforms. She can work with brands. She can do things with brands that a regular human could never do in a million years. And so this is a big part of why we developed her out, but also a way to really show the community the strength of our IP, that we can build out these incredible characters in a really, really awesome way.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Now, where do you see Women and Weapons, you know, the brand in the next few years? Like, because I know you put out season 1 and season 2 of Women and Weapons. Are you planning to do like a season 3 of Women and Weapons? Like, what's the plans possibly for the brand Women and Weapons?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now, no present thoughts or plans for season 3. One of our biggest goals and really one of our missions is to honor and celebrate the intrinsic power in women while creating a world of characters that come to life and tell stories and inspire and empower the next generation. But we're also on, like I said earlier, building out Women and Weapons to be a household name and a household brand. And I imagine the next few years that we will be able to gain that recognition beyond the NFT space. And, you know, for some of our investments like Nova and really kind of pushing her beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, like in terms of, outside of being an artist and, doing the Women and Weapons collection, like what are some things that you like to do to decompress, like outside of, Women and Weapons?
Yeah, decompressing time is few and far in between, but outside of Women and Weapons, a lot of my decompression comes from being outside. I love to be outdoors whenever I possibly can. I obviously love drawing, so a lot of the times I'll plop myself on the sofa or somewhere and just draw. And next thing you know, I'm like, it's kind of like meditating almost for me. I don't know if it's the same way for you, but like anything that I'm stressed out about or I'm thinking about or whatever is just like gone to the wind whenever I'm making art. And I'm just like, there's nothing going on in there. And it's really a great opportunity for my body to like totally decompress. But also spending time with my family. I love spending time with my husband and his family. I love spending time with my mom. And I'm definitely animal obsessed. So spending time with my pets or, anybody else's pets is also definitely a decompression win for me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like making art, I love making art, I love listening to music. That helps me decompress, get my mind off of things, and it's just so crazy. Like the power of music, it makes a huge impact on the world. So that's really, really cool about that.
As we heard many times last night during the Grammys, right? Which seemed like, I feel like that hit closer to home last night watching the Grammys than it ever has before. Like how much music brings the world together. Because I recognize that like the vast majority of the time whenever I'm listening to music, I'm listening to Spanish music, Turkish music, African music, Arabic music, Iranian music, like listening to music from all across the globe. And like how it brings us together is really special, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Most definitely. Now, where could people find you on social media? How could people support Women and Weapons and, and how could people get involved?
Yeah. So you can find me. I'm basically across Twitter and Instagram. I'm at NFT Sara Baumann, and there's no H in the Sara. And then Women and Weapons is at Women and Weapons on Twitter and on Instagram. And then Nova, if you wanted to look up Nova and see some of her super sassy videos, she's either at The Rise of Nova or at Rise of Nova on social media platforms. And if anybody's interested in participating in the Women and Weapons ecosystem, you can absolutely look us up on OpenSea, or you can head to our website at womenandweapons.io.
All right. That's really amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sara, for jumping onto the show. I love this conversation. This is really, really cool to get to know you and your project, Women and Weapons. And, and I remember I first heard about it last year. It was like one of the most popular, like the top 10, female-led NFT collections. So big congratulations to you, and I definitely believe that, you and Leah Sams and others are really making an impact for women in the NFT Web3 space. So just thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And to all the folks that are out there that are wanting to jump in, there are a multitude of resources out there. We just have to fish them out, but take the time to learn. And we are more than happy to have you join in on Web3.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Asia. I appreciate you.
Goodbye. Take care. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also follow me on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Also visit my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and look out for more interviews involving NFTs, crypto, Web3, and the metaverse.